Copy 724, right. Center maintain 2000.
Center maintain 2074.
Comment 504 to center maintain 3000.
3000, comment 504.
In this video, we're going to be covering a new section, and this section is going to be basically divided into 3 videos. This is going to be the first part. We're going to be covering the aircraft and engine operations. The first thing we wanted to cover is what are the 4 main control surfaces. And they are 4. One is known as the elevator. Second is the ailerons. The third one is the rudder. And the fourth one are the trim tabs. Okay, so the elevator is the one which is basically gonna be controlling the altitude of the aircraft, and the movement it creates or it controls is known as pitch. So basically it's gonna control the nose angle or the angle of incidence of the plane, which is basically going to dictate how high or how low you're going to be. Ailerons are used again for taking turns, right? So they are, what they do is like they control the airplane's movement in about its horizontal axis, and the movement they control is known as the roll. As we know that ailerons are used in order to roll towards right or towards left, and if you keep putting control on it, you can eventually have a complete roll if the airplane supports that. Rudder is basically gonna control the vertical axis, right? And again, we basically, when we are turning, when we are airborne and we are turning right or left, we actually make use of both the rudder and aileron to go right or left. But the rudder is going to be controlling the vertical movement, vertical axis, movement about its vertical axis, and the movement is known as the yaw. Sorry, the motion is known as the yaw. And trim tabs can be anywhere depending on your plane. 152, I remember it just had the trims on the elevators, I guess. Yeah. So it can be anywhere. It can be on any of the surfaces like the ailerons, rudders, or elevators, and they are basically there to take some manual labor out of the picture, and basically where you are putting the manual pressure on any of the controls, they can actually be used in order to remove that manual pressure. Okay, like how are the various flight controls operated? Okay, so basically these surfaces, they are manually actuated, and through the use of either the rod and or the cable system, depending on the plane, right? uh, and like a control wheel actuates the ailerons and the elevators, and the rudder or brake pedals actuate the rudder. Okay, so what are the flaps and what are their functions? So the flaps, as we know, that they are used mostly in landing. They can sometimes be used for in order to make the takeoff distance short. They are used in that scenarios too, but basically they are controlled brakes, I would say. Basically they what they are is like these are the movable panels, right, on the wings, inboard trailing edges of the wings, uh, and they can, what they can do is like they can extend the down, basically uh, the purpose is to permit the slower airspeed and a steeper angle of descent during a landing approach. That's what the flaps are used for. So then the examiner may ask you some particular questions about your plane. They may ask you about the landing gear system. And basically, in this one, I'm gonna be using the example of Cessna 150, 152. Uh, that is a very widely used one, and that's what I wanna be covering for these particular questions. So if you have another one, you have to learn about that. So the landing gear consists of a tricycle type system utilizing two main wheels and a steerable nose wheel. Okay. Then braking system. You need to know the braking system on your airplane. Again, 150, 152, we have the hydraulically actuated disc type brakes. They are utilized on each main gear wheel. Main gear, not on the nose wheel, but these hydraulically actuated disc type brakes are used. Okay. Then, like, you should also know about your hydraulic fluid. If you have the hydraulic brakes, like what type of the hydraulic fluid and does your aircraft use, and what color it is it. So again, 150, 152, we have a mineral based hydraulic fluid, uh, and this is the exact version number 5606. Right, it's a mineral based hydraulic fluid, and it is used mostly in a wide variety of the small aircraft. That's the one which is we use. It also has an odor similar to a penetrating oil, and it is dyed red. The color of this fluid is red. Okay. Then we have a steering, like how is the steering accomplished on the ground. So when you are on the ground, right, they are generally steered by the nose wheel. So yeah, the nose wheel steering, what it does is like it steers by using because it has a simple system of a mechanical linkage connected to the rudder pedal. So when you actually use the rudder pedals, that's how you can actually move the airplane or steer the airplane in any direction by actually so basically the rudders in 150, 152, when pressed both, and so if you're using your toes on the rudders, you're gonna be steering it. But if you the brakes are a little bit above the rudder, so when you're using both of your feet, that's gonna be pressing the brakes. Okay. Then, okay, what type of engine does your aircraft have? So again, talking about 150, 152, we have got the four-cylinder overhead valve air-cooled carbureted engine, and it is 100 110 horsepower for 150 or 152. Then we're gonna be covering some mechanics here, like he may ask you about the four strokes, right? Like what are those in an engine, and how do you get the power? So basically, if you want to know, like, all of these cycles, four strokes or the four cycles, have the names. The first one is intake, then we have got the compression, then we got power, and then we got the exhaust. Intake, basically, so the piston actually starts its downward travel, causing the intake valve to open and the fuel air mixture to be drawn into the cylinder. The compression is like when the intake valve closes and the piston starts moving back to the top of the cylinder, right? And this phase of the cycle is used to obtain as much greater power output from the fuel oil mixture once it is ignited. And the third one is the power, like begins when the fuel air mixture is ignited, which causes a tremendous pressure increase in the cylinder and forces the piston downward away from the cylinder head, creating the power that turns the crankshaft. That actually the third one where we are getting the power is gonna be the turning the crankshaft. Uh, and the exhaust is used to purge the cylinder of busted gases and begins when the exhaust valve opens and the piston starts to move toward the cylindrical head once again. Okay, uh, now we wanted to cover what is this carburetor. And an airplane carburetor is not different than a car carburetor. Again, what it is used for, it's a device and a process at the same time of mixing fuel and air in the correct proportions so as to form a combustible mixture. So basically, the carburetor vaporizes liquid fuel into small particles and then mixes it with air, and basically it controls both of the amount of the air and the fuel, so it measures the airflow and the meters fuel accordingly. The last thing I wanted to cover in this video was like how does the carburetor heat system work. So 150 or 152, Cessna 150 or 152 does have that the carburetor heat system. What happens is like carburetor heat valve controlled by it, and we as pilots control that. We allow the unfiltered heated air from a shroud located around an exhaust riser, or it could be a muffler, right, to be directed to the induction air manifold prior to the carburetor. In a regular environment, when we are not using this carburetor heat system, the air is directly going to go to the carburetor. But when we want to use this carburetor heat system, what's going to happen is like the exhaust, the heated air, it could be from again the exhaust riser or the muffler, and it's gonna be directed to the a thing called induction air manifold, and then after passing from there it will be going to the carburetor. And why would you use it is because the carburetor heat should be used anytime suspected or known carburetor icing conditions exist. Normally used in the weather, in a very winter conditions, could be happen any time, but whenever you are feeling or the conditions exist where you would see that there would be an icing in the uh, in the in the carburetor, you would be using the carburetor heat system. carburetor head system. Thanks for watching. These were the questions I wanted to cover.